so everybody knows that. And with that in mind, I think we might be ready to start. So Vic, you want to take a lead off?
Absolutely, more than happy to. So thank you for taking the time to have me today. My name is Vic Baker. We're going to discuss the Community Wildfire Safety Program. I'm Senior Manager at PG&E. I manage Sonoma and North Bay and Diablo, which consists of Contra Costa County, Marin County, Sonoma County, and Contra Costa, Marin, Sonoma, and Napa County. I just inherited this area in January after a vacancy. Our esteemed predecessor took a fantastic job in PG&E, so he was promoted, and here I am. I got the pleasure of inheriting this great, wonderful geographic group here. So thank you for having me again. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about what we are doing to reduce the threat of wildfires, specifically in Oakmont and system-wide as well, and opportunities for us to work together to improve the public safety power shutoff events. So we always start with safety. So we know that everyone is currently focused on staying safe from coronavirus, COVID-19, and we appreciate your part. Can you hear me okay?
I don't see any Heidi.
Somebody
I'll
is.
pause there, George.
But here we are, but I can't put
I
you
hear
up.
you. It
Come
sounds
on.
like
Somebody needs to be
I thought
muted.
we'd be over here, but I guess we're not. I thought it would be a picture of us there like it started.
Barbara, please
No,
mute
they
your
don't want
Zoom.
us.
Barbara
Sorry.
Adams.
Okay. Vic, are we back
Okay.
on?
I hope so. And everyone can
Sorry
hear
about
me
that, Vic.
fine, correctly? Okay, good. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you. Yeah, and so as I was saying, we're talking about coronavirus and appreciate your participation during this challenging time because it is challenging. So we are still doing everything we had planned to address this at the threat of the catastrophic wildfires, despite the constraints imposed by coronavirus and COVID-19 pandemic. PG&E has identified much of the essential work needed to serve both our customers and the community. So this essential work includes everything from emergency response to our critical maintenance and infrastructure work to further our preparedness for the public safety power shutoff, what we're going to talk about today, but also work associated with our wildfire mitigation plan and the new customer connections as well. So we know COVID-19 pandemic requires us to work even harder to prevent catastrophic wildfires and to minimize any kind of disruption to our communities and individuals who must call when we call our PSPS event. It's impacted it that much more during a coronavirus. So we have to be cognizant of all of those things moving in. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the wildfire risk across PG&E service area, and then we're going to focus a little bit on Oakmont. Okay. So as you can see, nearly 1/3 of the electric lines that provide electricity to our customers with power are now in higher fire threat areas. And these areas, of course, are designated by the California Public Utilities Commission. California continues to experience extreme weather, leading to an increase in wildfire risk and a longer wildfire season. Example of that, and great statistics around that, is that 4 million acres burned in 2020 across, and that's 3 times the average for the prior 3 years combined. So our most important responsibility is the safety, of course, of you, our customers, and the community. And this is why we're taking immediate and comprehensive actions to upgrade our infrastructure, monitor our fire threats in real time, and institute new wildfire safety measures. But your concern is Oakmont. So let's talk a little bit about Oakmont. So this is Oakmont. Everyone can see that?
Yep.
Okay, so on this slide, you see the higher fire threat map for Oakmont specifically. Again, this fire threat map was developed by the CPUC, and it's in coordination with CAL FIRE. So both of them developed this map. But they also get input from us, from PG&E and the other electric utilities throughout the service territory, as well as our telecommunications infrastructure providers, the AT&Ts of the world, the Comcasts of the world. So we do contribute to it in certain ways. You want me to pause, Mike, George, while you find that one?
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can find that.
I got it.
You got it? Okay, we're all set.
That's teamwork. I love it. Teamwork. Thank you, guys.
We got your back.
Appreciate you. So the map shows areas at high risk for wildfire. So if you notice, the high risk or tier 3 areas are in the community are in the dark red, and the tier 2 elevated risk are in gold. So the majority of Oakmont is in tier 1. The majority of it is tier 1. However, the hillside surrounding, all the surrounding areas are in tier 3. And you can see from the graphic that tier 3 areas surrounded, and the land along the edges of Oakmont community vegetations within Oakmont are in tier 2. So it's highly impactful there. As you notice, the centerpiece, of course, that's your most urban areas, are less impacted. We don't have control over this map. This map, again, is controlled by the CPUC. It's important that I say that because many people ask, well, why don't you change it or upgrade it based on vegetation and all that? This is a 10-year process to even develop this map. Okay. You can access this map anytime. You can go to the cpuc.ca.gov and see this map anytime that you want. So you don't have to wait for me to send it to you. You can go check it out. And you can check out any other area as well. So if you have a second home or your family or residence, you can also check and see where they reside. So let's talk a little bit about the Community Wildfire Safety Program. So our Community Wildfire Safety Program, or CWSP for short, is focused on reducing wildfire risk, improving situational awareness, and working nonstop to, of course, improve public safety power shutoff events. The focus areas include our Community Wildfire Safety Program, our meeting and exceeding our vegetation safety standards. That's number one. We definitely want to meet and exceed our vegetation safety standards, but we also want to improve our electric grid. That means stronger power lines and poles. So for example, tree wires, what we call stronger power lines, and the poles, we're using composite poles where we can. And of course, we want to increase our testing and using new tools and new technologies like LiDAR and ways that we can monitor our infrastructure in real time. So we're doing all this kind of a nonstop approach to improving our public safety for these power shutoff events. Right? And they're inevitable. They are what they are. And these are efforts in order for us to prevent any type of activity that of our infrastructure being a part of those, being a causation of any of those wildfire events. So we're focused, though, we don't do this in a bubble. We focus on listening to our customers. So this is one of the reasons why we're on the phone. I can collect some data from you, some questions from you, and get back to you. But also learning from better data and technology year over year over year. So when we started this in 2018, our public safety power shutoff events have gotten much nimbler throughout the time, over the years, over the last 3 years. And of course, providing more resources and ever before to customers before, during, and after those events. We rely on electricity every day. We want to work with our customers like yourselves on solutions to prevent these wildfires and keep our communities safe. And I want to then talk about what does that look like when it comes to public safety power shutoffs. So everyone see that?
Yep.
What it is public? Okay, great. In the interest of public safety, PG&E may have to, of course, turn off electricity, right? In severe weather that affects our electric system. It's my understanding that you've had a similar presentation. You guys you kind of understand how the weather affects our system. So even though the majority of us live in tier 1, that because our power lines go through tier 2 or tier 3, that they're upstream from us, we're downstream from them. And if those shut off, that means we shut off, right? So this is the essence of our public safety power shutoff. The most likely electric lines to be shut off are those that are going to pass through those high fire threat areas, right? This includes both distribution and transmission. In 2018, it was only distribution. 2019, we included transmission. So we're improving as we go forward. At a high level, electricity flows from your generation source through several miles of high voltage transmission lines. And from there, the electricity flows into the substation where the voltage is stepped down and usable levels for our commercial and residential customers. So it's big power to little power to our house is how I always kind of describe it. So it's also possible for one of the homes to lose power, but for your neighbors to still have power. And if you are served by different power, especially if you're served by different power lines. For you specifically, Oakmont is served by 2 different sets of power lines. We have the 1101 and 1102, I believe. And so we are managing that infrastructure. When I get into some of the improvements we've made, some of the improvements can affect some of you, but not all of you, because you're served from a different path. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Briefly go through this slide about conditions. What can lead to a PSPS event? This is always a topic of conversation. Everyone wants to know the formula. I can tell you, I was in San Diego working for San Diego Gas and Electric when we started our process in 2007, 2008. There is no one formula, okay? All of these things are combined, and at the end of the day, somebody has to make a decision what we're gonna do, because there's a risk involved in this, right? And the top piece of this risk is safety for all of us. So each weather situation is unique. We carefully review a combination of factors when deciding to turn the power off. So some of these factors include low humidity levels, generally 20% and below. A forecast of high winds, particularly sustained winds of above 25 miles per hour and above 45, and gust of about 45 miles per hour. Okay, so 25-hour sustained, wind gust above 45 miles per hour. Dry conditions, conditions of dry material on the ground and vegetation near the lines itself, and California's own red flag warnings declared by the National Weather Service. So you got the National Weather Service, and you also have California's Office of Emergency Services. We also get out to the field and we can see ourselves. We want to get out and look at it ourselves. So we have real-time ground observations, and some of that is coming from our new cameras that we installed in so many areas, right? We have our Wildfire Safety Operations Center from our crews working across the entire service area who actually monitor these conditions on the ground. So the other big question is, how are you notified? 2018, I think we're over notified. 2019, we got a little better. In 2020, we're doing even better. So I'm real happy with our progress. This is new to us. We're only 3 to 4 years into this, and we making substantial improvements. But one of those ways that we've made improvements is how you're notified. So we will always do our best to share what we know about the weather and the equipment as soon as we can. Keep in mind, weather conditions can be uncertain, right? So our goal, whenever the forecast will allow, is to send customers notification around 2 days ahead, 1 day ahead, and just before shutting off the power. That is our goal. Okay? We know that weather is not an exact science, right? So we're going to do our best to do that for you. So customers will also be notified once a day until their power has been restored. So during the event, we have updated our customer notifications regarding what to expect during a public safety power shutoff event to provide more detail earlier, information about areas and addresses affected, and estimated restoration time. So for PG&E account holders, customers receiving notification through automatic calls and texts and emails, all of those, if you have that information in our system, you will be contacted in those ways. So if you have not gone online and inputted that information to your system, we absolutely encourage you to continue to do that. Do that, update it as much as you can. I update mine on an annual basis just to make sure. And so, yeah, we encourage you to continue to keep that contact information up to date. And you can do this by going to pge.com/my wildfire alerts. pge.com, My Wildfire Alerts. Okay. And we also provide updates through, of course, social media channels, local news, and radio outlets. So if you're signed up with Nixle, and if you're signed up, we work with our local law enforcement agencies as well to try to get all that information out. And we partner with our county Office of Emergency Service as well to try to get that information out. Okay. So this year, we've also launched our address alert notification, where anyone can receive public safety power shutoff notifications for any location. So you don't just have to get it for your home and where you live, but you can get it maybe for your children's school, or your second home, or your, wherever it may be. You can get it for different locations. And to sign up for address alerts, just visit pge.com/address alerts. So some of the meat, that exciting information that we have. Of course, I talked about what we've learned over these last 3 to 4 years. One particular piece is the northern part of Oakmont is served by our Rincon 1101 circuit, and that is coming out of our Rincon substation. You guys may be familiar with it. If not, it's I can't even think of the road it's on at this moment. I'm trying to look at the map myself. I can't think of the road, but here's the map. You guys should be able to see that. But if you notice the Rincon substation, PG&E's Rincon substation potentially impact 14,000 customers, including key community services that are listed there as well. So all of those areas are affected by that Rincon substation. Okay. So the project that we did is expected to be complete in August of this year. Right. The work plans and potential impacts of this project are preliminary and subject to change, but the system hardening and undergrounding and sectionalizing work is being conducted along another electric circuit that serves the Oakmont community and is expected to be completed in 2022. So what you see here in this underground project, so right now it's above ground, which means that we normally have to turn off that substation because it's in what? That's in a tier three area, I believe. Right, we would normally have to cut it off, but because we have taken that substation, undergrounded that line through the tier 3 area into a tier 1, so we're going to come back up in a tier 1 area. We can keep that circuit live most of the time. Okay, so saving nearly 14,000 customers in North Oakmont area where that circuit is serving. So we will be, and then of course all those other highly impacted resources we're going to be able to save as well. So I'm excited about that. Go ahead.
I have a quick clarification. I wasn't sure from what you said. Yes. Will this in fact be effective for this fire season in Oakmont?
Fire season, our PSPS season is going to start mid-May. This project's not going to be completed until August, September time.
Okay, but in August, September, it will apply to Oakmont's north area.
It will apply. It's not 100%. When I say 100%, nothing's 100% in this world, but it should manage to keep those 14,000 customers from a PSPS event. All right, that's the point of us designing and installing this. Okay. And I'll pause there for a second. Any other questions regarding this?
We'll have more, I'm sure.
Okay, you got it. So where are we at? So that's our undergrounding effort. So let me talk a little bit about our enhanced vegetation efforts. So the good news is we've been working in and around Oakmont. We've removed and worked on, not removed, but we've worked on at least 846 trees. We've verified 504 miles through our enhanced vegetation management work in the Oakmont area. So in addition to our routine veg management work, we have expanded and what enhanced vegetation work is to address vegetation that poses a higher potential for wildfire risk in high fire threat areas throughout our service territory. Okay. And as part of this program, what we do is we exceed the state standard for minimum clearance around power lines, including trimming overhanging limbs and branches. And we conduct additional inspections beyond the routine patrols to remove any hazardous vegetation such as dead and diseased and dying or defective trees that could harm any power lines or equipment. Okay. Overall, again, for the system, we've worked on 4,300 miles between 2018 and 2020, but for yours, we had 504 miles that we worked in your area. Okay. Other improvements we are making to our vegetation management program include deploying ground-based LiDAR. And this technology is used to review and record completed vegetation management work, improved our methods for verifying vegetation work and inspection. We've created a centralized team of arborists to identify and address issues in real time. Okay. Yeah. And then this is always somewhat of importance here when we talk about medical baseline program. So PG&E's medical baseline program, also known as the medical baseline allowance, is an assistance program for residential customers who rely on power for certain medical conditions. So customers will be considered based on medical conditions or needs, not on income. They will be considered based on medical conditions or needs. So the program includes two different kinds of help. One is a lower rate on your monthly energy bill. And then the other one is extra notification in advance of PSPS. So my living situation here at my home, we are medical baseline at my home as well, just on our living conditions here. So I experience a early alert myself, and it's important that we do. So we have some medical devices here that are necessary for that. Anyone can qualify for the medical baseline program if a full-time resident in your home depends on life support equipment, a patient with the special heating or air conditioning needs, or someone being treated for a life-threatening illness, as well, or a compromised immune system as well. So a complete list of qualifying medical conditions and devices can be found if you visit pge.com/medical baseline. pge.com/medical baseline, or you can call the 1-800-743-5000. That is our primary hotline for PG&E. So due to COVID-19 and the shelter at home guidelines and changing medical practitioner priorities, customers can now self-certify their eligibility to enroll in the medical baseline program. So I highly encourage you guys to take advantage of this for those who qualify. And this can be, I think you'll be surprised when you look at the list of the qualifying machinery that will qualify you for this program. All you have to do to self-enroll is a signature from, you don't need a signature from a qualified medical practitioner. It's not required to apply at this moment, given our COVID-19 standard. So I encourage you guys, if anybody qualifies, or if you know someone who qualifies, and maybe it's a neighbor or a friend, please have them reach out to PG&E and get signed up for this so they can receive those early alerts. They can receive advanced notification for PSPS. And then I will go quickly through this. So more information with regards to the tools to prepare for a PSPS event. Other resources we have created to support our customers include address alerts for the PSPS, of course, PG&E resources available for more than 250 languages. So we've really gotten advanced in that area to meet many of our non-English speaking customers. Our weather website to view current weather conditions. The Safety Action Center, which provides emergency preparedness resources, and our backup power and storage web pages with information on safety tips on backup power systems. backup power systems, backup power system. I continue to emphasize that. That is what I've been speaking to many of my customers over the last 3 to 4 years. We at our home have to do a risk analysis for the potential of a power shutdown in my home. Does that constitute me going to get candles, flashlights, or a generator? And I have to make that determination. For us, it's a generator. We have to keep power on given our situation at home. And PG&E has quite a bit of information about backup power and storage on our website. So just go to pge.com and you can find quite a bit of that information. So I know I talked a lot. I said I was going to take about 20 minutes, so I'm right at about 20 minutes. So I'm going to pause there. I'm going to answer any questions you may have. If I don't know the answer, I'll be happy to go get those answers for you and provide them to George in an email and say, hey, George, these are the answers that I wasn't smart enough to answer, and you can send them to your constituents, okay?
Okay, Vic, thank you very much. I think what we're going to do is run to Neil and then a brief one to Paul, and then we'll go to a Q&A, okay? So, Neil, there you are. There you go. So Neil, you want to take over and talk a little bit about the fire side of this?
Sure. So I am the emergency manager for the city of Santa Rosa. I'm going to go over our alert and warning systems and briefly talk about the Noaa weather radios, which I know none of you came and got the other day. And then we could turn over to Paul for more specifics on fire operations. Even though I work for the fire department, that's really Paul's area of expertise, but I'll start with the alert and warning stuff. And as we get into questions, we're happy to address whatever there might be. So I'm gonna share one thing here. All right. So I just want to review for everyone, even though I know you're all experts, the differences between our alert and warning systems and how they get used. So remember, none of these is perfect. They all rely on technology as well as humans, which is why we always use a multiple channel of alert and warning, meaning we never just use one of these systems. We use many systems depending on what the emergency is. Sometimes we will use, say, 2, that's the minimum. Sometimes we will use all of them. It really depends on how big the emergency is and what we're trying to accomplish. So starting at the top here, I'll remind everyone, we do use the emergency alert system. That's the one on TV. We did, in fact, activate that in the glass fire. Remember that one, even if it's only a Sonoma County or Santa Rosa event, goes out over all of the television and radio stations that participate in EAS. So for us to use it, it needs to be something quite large. We're not allowed to just use it even if we're evacuating, say, one zone in the city or the county. It needs to be really, really big. Otherwise, the broadcasters, for the most part, try and discourage us. But we do use it. The next one, the WEA, or Wireless Emergency Alert. This is one you don't have to do anything for. If you have a cell phone, the key there is it will alert whoever is in the area that the cell phone tower determines is in the box that we drew. So if there's a fire and the fire commanders, incident commanders in the field say we need to evacuate Oakmont, north of Oakmont, and Pythian, I draw a box. The box goes to the federal system, which is WEA, and says cell phone towers, any phone that is in the box that Neil drew, alert them for whatever the notification is. A few things. Carrier to carrier, wireless emergency alerts are not consistent. Similarly, they are not necessarily consistent between phone models, depending on the age of your phone. Moreover, depending on the age of your phone, we are limited to no more, even on a no phone, than to 360 characters, which really isn't a lot on a wireless emergency alert. But for older phones, we're limited to 90 characters. And go after this and try and put a message to someone of any importance in 90 characters, and you'll see it is not easy. So what we wind up having to do is use some abbreviations be very short in our message. The point of the WIA is really to alert you to whatever the hazard is and the action we want you to take, but to then follow up with other resources related to that one to make sure you have all the information you need. So we will always, when we do a WIA, which is a targeted cell phone alert that you only have to just have your cell phone on and not on silent or buzz for. So in the middle of the night on those red flag days, make sure your phone is on, charged, and loud. But we will always, with the wireless emergency alert, use SoCo alert. SoCo alert, you do have to opt into. And even though the vendor does kind of change their menu frequently, you can go to socoalert.com to opt in. You can also call this phone number and press menu item 2. Frankly, if the menu has changed since the last time we printed this, just keep hitting 0 till you get a live person, tell them where you live and they need help opting in. We also just, when you came and registered and asked, we gave you that Noaa weather radio, we asked you to give us your info to opt you in to SoCo alert. So a lot of you will probably be opted in that way if you haven't already, but I suggest you go get opted into SoCo alert. We always use SoCo alert and wireless emergency alert together for any emergency that we have. The next one down is Nixle. Nixle is a great tool, but I need to emphasize, Nixle is not a primary alert and warning notification tool for the city of Santa Rosa because it will not ring your telephone. It is only email and text. We will use Nixle, but we will get to Nixle after we have executed these first 2. Nixle is not a priority for the city. It is very important, but it is not a priority when we're trying to get a message out. We do use Nixle, but again, if you're signed up for Nixle but not SoCo alert, you're not getting the primary information that you may need. We'll put any information we use on Nixle on our social media as well, but again, social media, city's website are going to be updated as soon as we can, understanding that in a fast-moving fire where there's evacuation, we may only get a wireless emergency alert, SoCo alert out, and by the time we start doing our Nixle, I'm being told to do another wireless emergency alert and SoCo alert. So Nixle, our website and social media only get updated when we have a minute, when the incident is stabilized or we don't have a new evacuation coming in. We always also use local radio and television, same idea here with the other ones. If we can get in contact with them, we'll give them the info, but that is not a primary resource in those first few minutes of an emergency. Your primary resource for getting information is the WIA and being signed up for SoCo alert. Our new one, which is not on here, is the Noaa weather radio. So the Noaa weather radio is somewhere between that emergency alert and the wireless emergency alert, meaning we don't have to wait for the biggest disaster ever to use it, but we can't because we're in partnership with the National Weather Service. If we have a 4-acre grass fire right off of Highway 12, even if we need to evacuate a couple houses, the National Weather Service, who owns the Noaa weather radio repeaters and system and has to put that message out for us, is not going to put out a Noaa weather radio message unless we're evacuating a substantial portion of the city or county. So do not expect this summer, every time there's an evacuation that's not very large, but maybe of concern, for your weather radio to go off. Your weather radio is only going to go off in a large evacuation like you saw in Glass Fire. It is not meant for those smaller evacuations where we will, of course, always use our WIA and SoCo alert. The other thing I just want to make sure you all understand about your new Noaa weather radios is if we have another August complex where West County is on fire and they do order evacuations there that are large enough to turn on those Noaa weather radios, your weather radio is going to go off for an evacuation that triggers a Noaa weather radio anywhere in Sonoma County. At this time, there's only one frequency for all of Sonoma County. They're hoping down the road to maybe split us up into 4 sections. But right now, if a Noaa weather radio message is going to go out for West County, North County, not Santa Rosa, our radios are still going to go off. The key again there is therefore, when the radio goes off, that's your clue that something's going on to go and get more information from other sources. If you don't, within a couple minutes of a Noaa weather radio alert in Oakmont, get a WIA or SoCo alert, it is very likely that the evacuation that the NOAA weather radio alert is about is not in Oakmont or in Eastern Santa Rosa. In those situations, we will try and update our Nixles social media website as quickly as possible so that you understand, yes, the radios went off, yes, there's an evacuation, but this is not threatening Santa Rosa, stand by, it is not threatening you. That's pretty much my overview of alert and warning and that stuff. I will hold off and let Paul present, and then we can get to any of the questions out there.
Okay, Neil, I want to mention to everybody that Oakmont's website, which is oakmontvillage.com, if you go to that website and you go to the section on member, there's a section under that called emergency preparedness. And that has the exact slide that Neil just showed you. And it has a number of other information, including some of the information that Vic had given you. Okay. Paul, do you want to wrap this up for us? And then we'll open up the Q&A.
Yes, sir. I'll try and make it as quick as possible. My name is Paul Lowenthal. For those of you who have not met, Assistant Fire Marshal, and I currently manage the development of the City of Santa Rosa's Vegetation Management Program, the implementation of our Community Wildfire Protection Plan, and I manage and oversee primarily our public information and education and outreach. So I was asked to kind of touch on fire season 21, what to expect, and kind of some highlights of what's going on within our organization. So as we have seen or not seen, the lack of rain is obviously causing an increase of concern, not only here locally in Sonoma County, but really across much of the state with the drought conditions that we're moving into. With that, we do not have a date yet set for the declaration of fire season here locally. We're continuing to monitor the conditions, communicate with CAL FIRE, but we will, my guess is see the start of it in May, but the exact date yet has not been determined. The reason that date is important is for a number of reasons. It's where we operationally shift from kind of our quote unquote winter responses with the type of gear we carry on our engines to fire season, but it also plays into our weed abatement ordinance. So once the fire season is declared, our weed abatement ordinance goes into effect, which I know several Oakmont HOAs are actively involved in doing work, utilizing grazing, getting everything ready for this season. The benefit of the lack of rain, if you can actually say a benefit, is that we really didn't get as much seasonal grasses as we would typically get here locally. So I don't expect to see the need for multiple recuts of the seasonal grasses this year. The flip side, the downside to the lack of seasonal grasses is that our heavier fuels are what has contributed to the growth of the fires that we've seen since 2017. The brush, the timber, that stuff is very dry, extremely dry, and we'll continue to probably see record-breaking levels across the state. For us, that's a concern. That does not mean that as soon as we declare fire season that we are likely to see anything like the Tubbs, Nuns, or Glass fires at the beginning of the season. What that means is that we will likely start responding to fires much earlier than we would typically. And our peak of the fire season, which we typically here see around September, October, will likely come much earlier this year. So our hope is that if that does happen, the season will end quickly and we'll get rains. However, we do want to be prepared for a potentially early start and a long fire season. So with that, the changes that we've made as an organization since 2017 will continue. We will continue to upstaff our firefighters anytime there's fire weather, the red flag warnings, not only here in Santa Rosa, but across Sonoma County. Like Vic had talked about earlier with the webcams, there have been great improvements to the webcams with the number of webcams in Sonoma County, and also additional, I don't know if Neil wants to highlight or talk about it, but improvements to the cameras where there's actually artificial intelligence now assisting in the monitoring of some of the cameras for us. So in addition to our dispatchers and CAL FIRE and PG&E, we actually have artificial intelligence now monitoring the camera as well. So I see Neil unmuted.
I mean, it's in its nascent stages. The technology was turned on about a month ago. And right now we are more or less teaching the AI I've experienced it pretty much anytime it sees anything that looks like smoke or a puffy cloud, it notifies a human and says, hey, what is this? We're getting better at teaching it what is and isn't actually something of concern. But the thing, regardless of how good it gets, the positive is we will have a computer notifying humans and catching things very quickly and saying, this is something humans need to look at and give more attention to, just in case maybe we're inattentive. It'll flag it for us to take a further look at.
Thanks, Neil. So and really, the reason I bring that up is, yes, it's in its infancy, but it's showing that organizations like Santa Rosa, the county, we're all collectively working to continue to make improvements to our ability to respond. And that these changes really do highlight the successes that came out of the glass fire. You look at how we responded in 2017 compared to how we responded in 2020 is night and day. Clearly, like we've talked about in previous community meetings with the residents in Oakmont, we don't want to lose or have any homes destroyed or damaged in a wildfire. But the fact that we were able to, in 2017, go from losing 3,000 plus structures in Santa Rosa to having 1,150 properties impacted by fire in the city, but only having roughly 30 homes destroyed, shows how much the improvements have been made at all different levels, whether it's residents doing their part to create defensible space, whether it's the changes that we've made and how we respond to fires, whether it's the enhanced vegetation management that PG&E is doing. Collectively, we are seeing the improvements in our responses and in some cases being able to limit the damage from them.
Okay, we're about to go to Q&A. I want to first of all thank Neil, Paul. I want to thank your teams for what they did for Oakmont last year. And that was unbelievable and marvelous. And thank you so much. Okay, I also want to show a quick picture. This is sharing, I hope, wrong screen. So let's stop that. Let's get the screen I want. Share screen. This should be the screen. Yeah, okay. This particular diagram is Oakmont. The blue lines represent the circuits that are supported by the Rincon substation. This is what Vic was talking about. The brown lines, which are are supported by the Dunbar substation down next to Glen Ellen, and those were not affected from Rincon. So if you just sort of get a quick, brilliant look at this, okay, it will tell you which of the two circuits you're on. And just to highlight it, right here in the middle, this is the central Oakmont. And so you'll see that the central facilities plus Oakmont Gardens are just barely covered by Rincon, but they are, okay? So just wanted to show that briefly. Let's go to Q&A.
So George, go ahead.
One other, I was just say one other thing that's new for this season related to alert and warning is we did a wireless emergency alert test in Oakmont last month. We recruited a number of Oakmont residents as volunteer testers. And we looked at those results, and there were a couple areas that we have a bit of a head scratch around. And so we're going to be doing another test next week using Santa Rosa Fire Department personnel and having us out there. But the moral of the story there is we are making sure that all the alert systems work for all of Oakmont all of the time. And if it doesn't, we will be working with the feds who own those systems and the telecoms to find out why they're not working.
Okay, Jeff, do you have any questions you want to highlight, or shall we just go to the chat?
So let's work off the chat, but there have been quite a few questions posted, and Vic has been doing a yeoman's job of creating some responses to those questions. So I propose that we give Vic the floor for a minute. Go ahead and catch us up on some of the questions that you've seen and the responses that you've given, please.
Not a problem. So one of the questions, of course, was someone needed me to send the fire map threat URL. So
Oops, I just muted somebody.
No, that was, didn't you hear all those explanations just now?
Oh,
While
it
I
was
on mute?
perfect.
The first question came with regards to the fire threat maps area. So we included the the URL for the fire threat maps is cpc.ca.gov/fire threat maps. So you can use that. You can highlight it, save it into your browser. Someone asked a question. I think it was Sue Dibble asked a question around oxygen and battery storage and things of that sort. So I just wanted to follow up and say we do. One, I guess the first question, why are we not burying our lines? Let's start there. So as part of our system hardening, PG is conducting targeted undergrounding to further reduce wildfire risk, but it is very much targeted. And it's going to be targeted in those areas, going to be high fire threat areas. And right now, Oakmont is not one of those areas, of course. But I don't know if it will be or will ever be, I'm gonna be honest, but if there is an opportunity. So I don't know too much about Oakmont. I don't know if it's, I believe that it's above ground and you guys have sticks in the ground. Not much of it is underground. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It's about a third sticks and about 2/3 underground.
Right. And so it's, and I don't know where those sticks fall with respect to the tiering, but I can tell you we're underground in those areas where we can, in those very, very impacted areas, those areas that truly need it. I'm not so sure where Oakmont would fall on that list of priorities at this moment, to be honest. But I just wanted to offer that. Now, for those, so if an organization or a company or a city or a community wanted to underground the system, there's a process we have. Anybody at any time can go through a process of trying to underground their system. But we have to work with our agency, our city or our county, and use their credits, their Rule 20 credits, their A or B credits to do that. And there will be a cost associated with it. Okay. She also asked, I thought it was a great question about medical baseline and battery backup systems. So PG&E does offer battery backup systems to medical baseline customers who are on life-threatening devices. We've expanded that this year to include, let me see. We expanded that this year to include medical baseline incentive, a financial incentive for home battery storage systems at no cost to the customer itself. So we can find more information around that on the pgne.com/wildfire, pgne.com, and let's just start there. I'll put the URL in the system for you. But we have expanded that. We've worked overtime because her question was, her friend did not qualify backup system. That hurts me. I didn't know that. I didn't know if that was the case, that we were denying people at all whatsoever. But I will bring this up to the team to find out and get some more information around it. But no, Sue, let me rest assured that your friend or your customer, your friend or family should be afforded a way to keep their life-threatening device available and up and running. Okay. Let me see. There's some other questions here. Someone wants to link to the slideshow. That's for you, George, to send that out if you can. They want to link to the slideshow showing the circuitry. You have that. You have a better one than I do. I can just tell you that. Can you add more Dunbar station homes to the Rincon station? No, not at this moment. It's a capacity issue. And that's why it's divided up to begin with, because you notice the 14,000. So Rincon doesn't just serve south along toward Oakmont, but it also serves a community center as well. So right now at the capacity there's not enough capacity on either the Dunbar or the Rincon to justify that. What are target schedules for EAS, WEA, and so-called? That's not me. That would be you, Neil. Okay. But let me skip that really quick and do this PSPS duration range should we plan for. There is no one answer, but I and my family, we have a week's worth of product in our house. I have a week's worth of product in our house to sustain us for at least a week. And I get it replenished every 6 months because certain things expire before the others. And I would encourage you to have a packet, have a kit at home in case this event, this happens. But usually, I wish I can give you a time frame, but usually these things last a day, maybe 2 days, sometimes 3 days. But let me give you a little bit of backing behind that. How this works is we get a weather, we want to turn it off early. When the weather stops, that doesn't mean that your power comes on immediately. When the weather stops, we have to go and look at every inch of the line to determine if there is any damage. And every PSPS event there's almost every PSPS there's been damage. So when we do a check of those lines, you see branches falling in lines and something happened to those lines where if we had turned the power on, it would have had a big problem. So it's important that we get out there. The more rural you are, the more time it takes to get out there and inspect those lines, right? And so that's where a lot of the timing comes in. I know a lot of people say to themselves, well, when it's not windy out there anymore, why isn't my power on? But that's why, because we have to go inspect, and if there's a problem, we have to fix it.
Okay. Questions for Neil and Paul? Jeff, you got the questions there?
Neil, can you address testing schedule for the EAS, WAA, and SoCo alerts?
Sure. Very frankly, I have no idea when EAS gets tested. That's done by the broadcasters during the middle of the day with television, and I'm not watching. I'm at work or doing something other than watching television, to my own sad dismay. The way WIA works now is we do targeted testing, but it only works if you are a tester. And the way that happens is there's special things that need to happen to your phone in order to be a tester, because we don't really want to alert an entire community every time we do a test. Same thing with SoCo alert. We do from time to time do targeted testing, but we don't just blast an entire community with a test on that, because if we were to call all of your phones, even though it says test, our concern is we'd have people who are probably not as smart as whoever asked that question and would suddenly bombard us and 911 with questions about the alert they just got, even though it's a test message or something along those lines. We are working with the county to look at doing some more targeted tests around SoCo alert and or WIA this summer. If you're interested in being a tester, get your info to George, and if we do those, happy to add you on as a tester. The new one, the Noaa weather radios. Again, we don't do the test, but my understanding is they're done Wednesday mornings every other week by the National Weather Service. The thing about the Noaa weather radio test is it's a silent test, meaning your radio will not tone out when that happens. There'll just be a message across the little readout there that says test alert or test received. So even on a Wednesday, if you're expecting to hear your radio go off, that's not what happens. I think they're around 11 in the morning, but very frankly, our local National Weather Service office doesn't do the test every week, and I'm not sure what their schedule is or if they're consistent about it.
Thank you. George, let's go to Paul.
Okay.
Hey, I see the question about the water for the volume. Yes, after 2017, things did change. The operating procedures for Santa Rosa changed, where reservoirs and tanks increase. Our water department works with us. So anytime we're moving into active fire weather, the water pressure does go up because we essentially fill our tanks higher than they would typically be filled. So that is something we do differently and have done differently since 2017.
I have a question myself for Paul or Neil. For some of our residents that they have family, for example, like in Petaluma or Nevada or someplace, and their best option is often to leave before the actual evacuation alerts are given. What would you suggest to them that they should be watching for to say, this is probably a good time to go visit your daughter, okay, who is not going to be in the middle of things?
I know that that was Tony Gosner, our former fire chief. That was one of his pretty regular talking points after the 17 fires. That was one of the questions we would get pretty often is, when should I go? Do I wait for the alerts? And really, there's no easy answer for that. Everybody's in a different situation. Everybody has different, there's different mobility issues. There's different care issues. There's, some people's homes are hardened and have great defensible space and have taken a lot of proactive measures. And there's other people that are buried in the woods. We are just encouraging people that if they don't feel safe, if they feel that they would rather err on the side of caution, take their evacuation checklist, use it, take all the different steps that we recommend doing and leaving the area until they're more comfortable returning or it's safe to do so. We're not stopping anybody from doing that. In fact, that was one of the messages that we delivered when we were expecting that significant wind event after the glass fire. We took some proactive measures that included opening up specific emergency vehicle access points because we really thought it was going to be a large scale wind event, and recommended that if people felt like they wanted to go ahead and leave, then that is absolutely what they should do.
I would agree with Paul. You need to use your own risk assessment and judgment around your comfort level. If there's a fire in the county somewhere and you see the smoke plume and you just feel uncomfortable and you want to go, we encourage you to get to wherever you do feel comfortable. If and when we have to put out an emergency alert, based upon the fire behavior and wind, our incident commanders in the field try and give us as much time as possible. I understand that maybe that's not enough time for some of you. Given that that's the case, be aware of what's going on. And if you hear about a fire somewhere outside the city and you just don't feel comfortable with the way you see it coming and the way the wind's blowing, pack the car and go somewhere else. But it really is until we are told by our incident commanders in the field that this is a go situation or a warning. You really just need to make your own decisions.
Thank you, Neil. Vic, we got a couple of questions that look like you could address on the subject of chipping and subject of baseline backup power assistance. If you would. Still muted.
There I go. All right.
Okay, thank you.
For the chipping, I was having a hard time understanding the question. If someone can kind of decipher it for me.
Did that come from Paul Noah? Can you come online?
No, I came from Paul Ryan.
Oh, okay, thank you.
I'm of Singing Woods. I don't want to take too long to just say that we had an incident on your easement just below the Oakmont substation south last summer when your contractors cleared the slash. But they just pulled the slash off to the side of the easement in piles, and there were 3 piles totaling about a quarter acre right below your substation there. And I worked through your, anyway, I got it, finally had one of PG&E crew come to, I said they need to chip that. And to my surprise, a guy came all the way from below in the South Bay area, all the way up here. And once he came here with a crew, unexpected, we did not expect to see a crew that day. We thought we were going to talk to some supervisor. He had a work crew of 5 with a chipper and everything. And he said, I can't do that because I can't get a chipper within 100 feet. That bottom line is, I would like to suggest somehow we eventually get PG&E to, as a changes company policy, to remove all slash, no matter how expensive, when their easements go through a residential development. I realize you can't afford to do it on thousands of miles of easements, but when you have one right in the middle of our development, right behind some of our houses and adjoining subdivision, I think they need to somehow change a policy. I did get the contractor to get a hold of his supervisor, and he did agree to let the crew spontaneously spread the slash out rather than be a target for embers to catch it in an open easement.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. So I would say that our policy at this moment is to chip any wood that's less than 4 inches. And
And this
that,
was all that. All of this was
Oh.
less than 4 inches. It was like
okay,
kindling.
so we may have heard you or may have recognized that situation last year and made this improvement, because at this moment, this is what we do. So we should be okay now.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Christina and Sorab. I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm mangling that. This looks to me like a Neil question about active fire maps.
So I will recommend a tool, and then maybe Paul has some resources. So, God, what's the name of it? I've been using it for so long. Paul, what is Pulse Point? So the red Pulse Point app, which was originally meant for letting people, if they knew CPR in the area, come and help them, has a direct feed of all vegetation fires in Sonoma County. It is directly linked to our fire medical dispatch. We will have, I know what Paul's going to say now, and he's probably going to shake his head that I couldn't remember this, on our Santa Rosa Fire Department Facebook page. At the bottom of the page, we have a live, our web page. So Pulse Point is an app available on both Android and iPhones, and that will tell you where there's any active fire that anyone's responding to in the county. If you'd like to know if it's something within the city of Santa Rosa, on our webpage, and again, this is an automatic update from the dispatch feed, on the Santa Rosa Fire Department webpage is a feed of any active fire incidents in the city. Would you say that's a correct characterization of what's there, Paul?
Yeah, so the website has City of Santa Rosa fire-related incidents. So smoke investigations, fire investigations, any type of fire will be on our website, and it leaves them up there for 48 hours total. The downside to both if you want to call it a downside, to Pulse Point and that is it just tells you where the incident is. One of the things that happens and has been I would say a problem with Pulse Point is everybody sees the quote unquote vegetation fire on Pulse Point and thinks that it's the Tubbs fire or the Nuns fire or the Glass fire. And I shouldn't say everybody, but that is a very common reaction. And then we get inundated with what's an update? Does anybody know anything about this information? So it is good for situational awareness, but it is, if there was a legitimate fire beyond just seeing it on Pulse Point, it would go through our alert and warning system. So we're encouraging people to use the tools, but just keep in mind that just because you see a fire on Melita Road on Pulse Point, it could literally be somebody had a trash can fire that they extinguished, they brought outside the house, they called us, we sent one fire engine, code 2, no lights and sirens, but it would still show up as a fire on Pulse Point.
Thank you, Paul.
One other
okay,
tool,
go ahead,
and,
Neil.
and I'll put a link in for this, is the fire cameras. Again, same disclaimer that Paul put there is just because you see smoke on the camera, that's to help you gain situational awareness. If it is one where we actually need an evacuation warning or order, we would do it. But the alert wildfire cameras will likely, if it's something of any substantial size, when you go there, be turned in the direction of that particular fire. With all of the other things going on, even if it's outside the city, you can start to see something developing. But again, until you get the order or the warning from us, that's just information. And we really don't want you to call the fire department or 911 saying, hey, I see this out in the county, what's happening? We're aware of it, we're dealing with it. As soon as we have info, as far as needing to get you to move with as much time as possible, we will push those through the alert and warning tools that I just talked about before. And I'm going to put the link to the cameras up here in the chat.
Thank you,
Okay,
Neil.
I just unmuted Iris. Iris, do you want to add anything about what Oakmont is doing internally?
Yes. We are available to visit any home from starting this hour. We've been doing a lot of preliminary visits to assessments to homes. We're trying to follow the guidelines of not only the 0 to 5 landscape that has been legislated by the board, but also to help people understand how to harden their homes. I've been out with Paul a couple of times, and you know, we have people pointing
Because
at the.
it's muted.
No, I mean, when it's not muted, can you?
Oh,
hear
yeah.
We've had, when Paul and I were out at, you know, one site together, that people were worried about the creek that was 50 feet away, but they hadn't done anything to harden their home in terms of the vents. He says, turn around and look at your house, look at the 0 to 5. And that's what our Firewise Committee is ready to do. We have done a lot of preliminary reports already and visits that have been instructive and educational. And also we've also found people who think they need to take something out or a tree out when they don't. They may need to limit up as opposed to remove it. So we want to try to protect vegetation, but mainly we're trying to make it safe for Paul and his team to get in there and get close to the house when they need to. He mentioned yesterday at the SIRS Club that not only do you need to harden your home in terms of close in the size of the embers with like flying rice. If you can throw rice into your vents and they can get in, then any embers can get in. So to do things to harden your home, we're happy to educate you about that. And we'll guide you about what needs to be done by August for the guidelines for the landscape. But we just want to make the job easy for the firefighters. And I did want to point out that Paul mentioned yesterday that the people on Stonebridge where the fire went through had already done a good job of their 0 to 5. But I do know at the glass fire where where the triplex went down, 4 houses down, firefighters were cutting junipers around a house because they were worried that the house down the street was going to go up. And we don't want them to have to be cutting junipers. We want them to be taking their hoses and just putting wet on red.
Okay. Vic, Paul, Neil, any final comment before we wrap up? Okay, I cannot thank you enough for having joined us. This is a difficult, complex problem, and it's moving all the time. Vic, do everything you can to get us resilient. We hope that the moves you're doing in Rincon will help at least part of Oakmont. And the important part is it will also help downtown Oakmont. And it's very nice if it's able to help the Oakmont Gardens. And Neil and Paul, everything you can do to give us advance notice of your having a concern would be most important here. And
George, it looked like Paul was taking a breath when you asked if there were any closing comments. Go ahead, Paul.
Oh, as always, we appreciate the opportunity to speak with the community. You know us and you know me, a lot of you. I sometimes talk too much, but we're always happy to answer questions and be a resource. We are actually hiring possibly up to 2 additional fire inspectors that'll work underneath my division that will be dedicated to actually working in the field and helping do home assessments and defensible space, home hardening talks. So we are doing what we said. We're going to be using the funds that we have for vegetation management to help educate our community and provide direct resources to them.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, George.
That we're going to wrap up. This has been recorded, so we will be able to post this. And then I mentioned again on the Oakmont Village website, okay, oakmontvillage.com, under the members area, there is a special area for emergency preparedness, which has a lot of this information that we've gathered, and we'll add to it after today's meeting. So thank you all. We're going to end the meeting now.
Okay, thank you.